Hi, I'm Jason, and welcome back to Community Design Review, where we look at this week's most popular cards from the custommagic subreddit. Starting with something I'm sure we can all agree on, Eldrazi are fun and fair. 13 mana for a legendary enchantment or a curse, enchant player. You control enchanted player. All I can really say about this is there's literally no way to exploit powerful cards with a big mana cost, and getting to 13 mana is impossible. This is very balanced. Next up we have Moundane. Basic land, Moundane. I would assume it taps for Moundane mana, but kind of hard to tell. Not really sure what this is referencing. I mean, there are just tons of possibilities that it could be. Really hard to nail down exactly what it's talking about here. My main criticism for this card is that the portmanteau is not really that indicative of the island side of this card. I mean, the name is 87.5% mountain and 12.5% island. Here are a list of better names just off the top of my head. Coming in at number 5 this week, Reject Reason. 2 blue-red for an instant with Meaningless, a keyword ability that says each card you discard while casting this spell pays for 1, and draw 2 cards. Now, I really like the mechanic here using Convoke's logic to use alternative sources to pay for your spells. And discarding a card I think is really cool here. The main problem I see is it's just such a big cost to reduce a spell by just 1 mana. Tapping your creatures to pay for a spell isn't that big of a deal because they're only out of commission for a turn. But discarding a card is almost like sacrificing those creatures. It's gone for the whole game. I don't know how this change would play for all spells with Meaningless, but in this case, I think Meaningless could actually be each card you discard pays for 2 of the card's cost. Maybe make it 4 blue and a red to cast, sorcery speed, and draw 3 cards. Then you can have 6 mana, draw 3, 4 mana, discard a card, draw 3, or 2 mana, discard 2 cards, draw 3. To me, that plays a little bit better because while I like the design of this card, as is, it's 4 mana, draw 2, instant, which is fine. 3 mana, discard a card, draw 2, which is a more expensive Thriller possibility, or it's 2 mana, discard 2 cards, draw 2, which is card disadvantage and not a very good card. Take from that what you will, but I do like this card. Number 4, we have Grant Imahara, 3 blue for a 3/3 legendary creature human artificer with flash. When Grant Imahara enters the battlefield, counter target spell. Create an XX colorless golem artifact creature token, where X is that spell's converted mana cost. Now, Grant Imahara, beloved nerd, passed away a little over a week ago, which I'm sure was the inspiration for this card. However, I never personally watched Mythbusters or any of the other things Grant Imahara was in, so I'm going to comment on this card purely from the mechanics of it. Now, this card obviously reminds me of Draining Welk, the main difference being Draining Welk costs 1 more, has flying, and is going to be 1/1 bigger than the spell as opposed to just equal to its converted mana cost. With Grant Imahara, you save that 1 mana, plus you get a 3/3 on top of that. In my opinion, Grant seems way too good. I'd probably bump it up to 6 mana, but if you're looking to keep this overpowered as a memoriam, then go for that. Number 3 is Petite Canopy, a single green mana for an instant. Prevent all damage that would be dealt to target creature you control with power 1 or less. It can't be the target of spells or abilities this turn. This looks like a nice, cheap protection spell for your key creatures that happen to have 1 power or less, probably in a higher power format like Modern or Legacy. I definitely think this isn't that powerful in the formats that most custom cards are good for, which is Commander or Limited. This doesn't really seem like it fits there, but again, those high power formats could be good for. Clocking in at number 2, we have Civilized Ways. 2 and a white for an enchantment. Players can cast spells and activate abilities only during their own turns. If a creature would be sacrificed, exile it instead, and creatures can't fight. The author added a little bit of context in the comments saying, no more interrupting, no more public executions, and no more bar fights. This could be good as a sideboard card against a control deck, especially one with like 30 counterspells, as it would just negate all of those unless you're casting during their turn, which you can't do either. And I guess there's a little bit of utility against a sacrifice deck because this exiles instead of sacrificing, so that would mean that sacrificed creatures wouldn't trigger things like Mayhem Devil, so that could be good as well. And then creatures can't fight could be a little bit of incidental value, but I don't think you're citing it in for that line because you're probably not playing against a fight deck, just a deck that has a few fight cards. Overall, not the most exciting card, but definitely gets the point across, and I like the flavor. And number 1 for this week is Ect Gracious Flare. 2 white-black for a 2/4 legendary creature horror. Non-creature spells cost a Phyrexian mana more to cast, and whenever an opponent pays life, you gain that much life, then create a 1/1 black horror creature token. This card's really cool. It increases the cost of non-creature spells like Thalia, Garden of Thraben, but it gives you and your opponents a way to actually circumvent the extra cost by paying life. However, when your opponent pays life in order to stay on curve, you actually gain that much life and get a 1/1 in the process. The gained life allows you to break even on your spells without having to pay additional mana, and for each non-creature spell you and your opponent cast, they come out 2 life less, and you get a 1/1 token. This seems like it could be a really cool commander, and you could build so many different decks with it. You could do a life gain deck, you could do a life drain deck, you could do a token deck, or you could do like a Death and Taxes style deck, which, as much as I hate Death and Taxes, I think would be the most appropriate style for this card. Sweet card design, and I think it uses the 2 colors it has perfectly. That's all we have for you this week. Thank you so much for watching. Make sure to check us out on Twitch and our social media because we post lots of content there that never makes it to our YouTube channel. We will see you next week.